Years ago, H.G. Wells visualized roads such as these in his science fiction fantasies, and today they're a reality.
You're listening to The Afternoon Commute with John Adams and Chris Kendall.
Yeah, it's April 21st, 2015. We've got Nancy Deville on the call with The Afternoon Commute with John Adams and myself. And Nancy, you're a nutrition expert. You've written some books and you study nutrition, and we were going to bring up some stuff about what kind of quality food is out there available on the grocery store. And your book is Death by Supermarket, right?
Right. Okay, so let me just clarify. I'm not a nutritionist, and I didn't study nutrition in school. I studied nutrition on my own. And I wrote some books with doctors, and then I branched out to write my own books. And I really love to start all interviews by saying that I'm not the food police, and I'm not sitting in condemnation or judgment of anybody. My goal in writing Death by Supermarket and also my other book, Healthy, Sexy, Happy, it was just to share what I've learned about our foodscape, which is pretty scary, but there is hope, and so that's what I want to share with people.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we actually like the fact that you're a nutritionist by basically using yourself as a guinea pig. Chris and I'd say we kind of do that as well. But from what I gathered from you, and I just want to say I seeked Nancy out to try to find her after I read Death by Supermarket a couple of years ago, and I was really glad that she agreed to have an interview with us, because I really liked what you said in that book and the way that you structured the book. It's real easy to read. It's a great book to pass on to somebody. There's other books out there, like even books that you mentioned in there, like books by Adele Davis and and other people like that are a little bit. They're not as easy to read as Death by Supermarket, and the overall idea behind Death by Supermarket, I really liked it. But Nancy, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to being healthy, sexy, and happy, like you said.
Okay, so I was raised on processed food, and I was sick my entire childhood, tonsillitis, everything that you can imagine. I was always sick, and then when my grandmother was a Polish immigrant, and she had sort of stumbled into a health lecture when she was 39, and I'm trying to do the math here. That was like in the 40s or something, but she would then became like the health nut of the family, but we didn't live with her. We lived across country from her, so we had very limited exposure to her, the way she cooked. So we really were, my brother and sister and I were raised on processed food, the worst kind of processed food. I mean, really, my mother only went shopping once a month at the Navy commissary, and so the only thing that would survive maybe were like everything like plums or something would get eaten up immediately, and then the only thing that would survive would be like the glazed donuts and chips. And we ate a lot of chips in our house, and the only thing we didn't eat, really, which is interesting, are sodas, because my mom thought they were too expensive, so she didn't buy them. So, but we were really raised on the worst kind of garbage. And so then I met my first boyfriend, who was like my first love, and he was European. And so I went to Europe immediately upon graduating from high school, and he and I hitchhiked to India, which is the subject of a memoir I just finished writing just recently. And so I I spent the next 3 years in India, and then I went to Spain, and then I lived in Europe a little over 3 years. And I wasn't exposed at all to processed food, not at all. And so when I came back to the States, I couldn't eat it. It made my mouth burn because it really is radically different substance to put in your mouth. And so from that point on...
When is this? Is this like in the 60s?
Yeah, I went to India in 1968 when I was 18. And at that time, there were the only thing you could get in India was real food. We were sort of poverty stricken, so we weren't eating the best quality food, but we were eating real food. And then, of course, in Europe, we ate only real food. There was no processed food at all. I can't even think of anything that was processed back then. It was all real food. So when I came back here and people were eating things out of boxes and tins and things like that, it was like really, really gross to me. So fast forward 20 years, and I was asked to write a book with the doctor, so I did that, and then I sort of really just fell into it because it was a natural interest I always had, because I was always sort of scratching my head, like, how did this happen? Why are we eating like this? The rest of the world isn't eating this way, so why are we? And so that's how Death by Supermarket evolved. And I appreciate what you say about the organization, because I think that it really evolved in an easy-to-read way, because I wanted to examine all the different areas. I wanted to look at meat. I wanted to look at dairy. I wanted to look at soy. I wanted to look at fats. And so as I read and researched all of those things, then I sort of laid it out in a kind of an easy-to-read, digest way, so you can understand how our foodscape evolved to be the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was easily digestible, pun intended.
Yeah.
Sorry about that bad joke.
Uh-huh.
Well, why don't we? Oh man, you're setting me up for so many bad jokes. I was going to say, why don't we get into the meat and the potatoes of it?
Yeah, don't say that, John.
I'm sorry. Anyways, well, why don't you tell us about soy?
Yeah, soy's a good one. I lived in Japan from 1966 to 68, I think, 65, 68. And when soy hit the scene, and everybody was all this health stuff was coming out from the FDA with FDA endorsements and stuff, I was going, really? Because I don't remember Japanese eating soy. And I spent my entire time in Tokyo. I did so much school. I was constantly up there. I was modeling. I was hanging out in the coffee shops. I was hanging out in sushi shops. I was really there in the nitty-gritty, and I never saw anybody eating soy. So this whole thing about Asians eat soy, I was like, I don't recall that. So I started reading, and I hooked up with Kayla Daniel, who is the doctor who wrote the whole soy story. And I read her manuscript twice before she was going to press. And so I really got to learn a lot from her. And what I learned was that soy has a lot of problems, not the least of which are the phytoestrogens. And phytoestrogens are plant estrogens. So, for example, males should not be consuming estrogen in any form. And females shouldn't either, unless it's being prescribed to them by their doctor. And so, but there are other problems with soy. It's not digestible very well. It's very allergenic. But I think the thing besides the phytoestrogen that is the scariest thing about soy is that it's a goitrogen, which means it dampens your thyroid. And as you know, we have a population of people now who are obese on normal amounts of food. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I believe that one of the reasons is because people are consuming things that are estrogen mimickers. So, and they are goitrogens, which are dampening. Both estrogen mimickers and goitrogens dampen your thyroid. So that means your thyroid, which is like your body's furnace, it sets the tone for your metabolism, is tamped down. And so you don't want to consume anything that's going to tamper with your thyroid. Your thyroid is what keeps you healthy and sexy and happy, basically, so you really don't want to consume that. When I see people, especially men, with their soy lattes and stuff, I think, really? It's crazy how we have been, as a population, so indoctrinated that soy is healthy when it's really not.
Do you think it's just because health officials just don't know that it's unhealthy, and that's why the health officials and people in the food industries push it?
Soy was not introduced into our food chain in a diabolical way, unless you look at Monsanto, and in my opinion, everything they do is diabolical. But it was introduced as a way to provide a sustainable protein. And so it's just that once the studies started proving that soy was really not a healthy food to consume in large amounts, like if you eat a little bit of miso soup or something like that, that's highly fermented in a natural way, that's different. That's the way Asians always ate it. They always ate it after it had been really fermented, and then a lot of the toxins had been kind of fermented out of it. But we're not eating that. We're eating chemicalized GMO. Even organic is not good. So to answer your question, I don't think that they intended to, it wasn't like a, behind closed doors, hey, let's kill them all, but it's like once they knew that they saw these studies and it was irrefutable, then there should have been some backtracking. Unfortunately, when you plant the entire planet with a plant that's then got a huge industry behind it, it's really hard to stop that from going any further. It's now fully established. But what I see a lot of are that people who are who make a habit of staying in touch with their bodies and staying in touch with health matters are backing away from soy, and it's really going to the mainstream, the lowest common denominator. They're the ones who are getting it.
Yeah, the process, that's the thing is, like, even if, well, I'll give you an example. I was vegetarian for a little bit. When I first started, I'd say about 11, 12 years ago, I started getting concerned about my health, and I fell into that vegetarian trap. And that's the first thing I went for was the soy products. And my hair started falling out. I started getting like painful dandruff and skin problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't feel any better. I noticed that when I did stop eating at McDonald's and all that junk, that I noticed that I didn't get as sick as much as I used to. Mm-hmm. But other things started to occur. So it was interesting that a couple, like maybe 2 or 3 years into it, I went back to eating meat and looking at fat and cholesterol in a different way. What could you tell us about fats and how they're good for us?
I want to say a couple things about what you just said, that you felt better from not eating processed food, but then other things started happening when you did the vegetarian/soy thing. So you had 2 strikes against you, because vegetarianism is really, really hard to sustain in a healthy way. And then, of course, you add in soy, which is a poison, basically, and so you've got a double whammy there. And we can get back to vegetarian and veganism if you want to in a little bit. I'm sorry, I forgot what your question was. Fat?
Oh, I asked about fat and cholesterol and how there's good fats, and we actually need fat for our brain and our heart and everything.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this today. I don't see normal doctors. I see what I call enlightened doctors. And I only go maybe once a year because I just go for hormones and stuff. Last time I went, I said to my doctor, I never want to see another cholesterol panel again. I'm not paying for that. I don't care. Don't show it to me. I don't want to see it. You can look at it. You can do it if you want to pay for it, but I don't want to pay for it. And the reason is because I don't believe in any of that. After all the reading I've done, it's just a complete hocus pocus bunch of nonsense that's really hurting people. Our entire body is made up of cholesterol. Every single of our trillions of cells are made up of cholesterol. And so if you want to have a healthy body, you need to eat cholesterol. We need to eat the biochemicals that we're made out of, not some cardboardy thing or depriving ourselves, which is so bad. I'm 64 now, and so I used to work out. I've been working out for 41 years. I used to work out every day, go for a 6-mile run or do Ashtanga yoga or go hiking or whatever. Now I can't really work out every day because I'm too sore. I'm older. It takes me longer to repair. But that means also that I want a lot of repair materials floating in my bloodstream. I want that cholesterol floating in my bloodstream because it's going to go to my cells, it's going to repair me, and it's going to keep me from aging in an accelerated way. So you want to have every day, you want to be giving your body those materials, eggs, butter, cream, saturated fat. I probably eat steak 4 times a week, and I always get the fatty kind, the ribeye steak. So Mary Enig, who was the lipid biochemist who was responsible for getting the FDA to finally label trans fats on foods in 2006, and she spent 35 years trying to do that. She was vilified and by the Boys Club and all of that, but she finally prevailed. But I was able to talk to her a few times during the writing of several of my books, and she's a wonderful woman. And she told me that all the studies showed that older women who had higher cholesterol, it was associated with longevity. And that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because these women had the materials in their bodies to repair, and so they lived longer.
I don't think that we live in 2015 and the people who are, in charge of promoting, this anti-cholesterol stuff, or at the top, at least, I don't think they do it unwittingly. I think it's intentional. I mean, because your brain is made up of mainly cholesterol, right? I mean, it's great to dumb people down if you want to dumb people down, and
it's tragic. Yeah. It's tragic, the dumbing down of our population, and also the convoluted kind of education that people have about miseducation, rather, that people have about nutrition. It's really sad because you'll see people saying, well, I would never eat butter, but yeah, they're eating a whole plate of French fries. It's like that doesn't make a bit of sense because French fries are riddled with both trans fats and free radicals that are going to damage your heart, your arteries in a really bad way and cause heart disease, where butter actually makes hormones that help your body stay healthy. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And the doctors and the health experts who keep all of this going, they also eat like that. I've been to dinner with lots of doctors who would never put a bit of butter on their vegetables, but they're sitting there eating some gross thing like pizza. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're 64, Nancy. I think my mother's just a couple years younger than you. And I'm telling you, you could pass for being 20 years younger.
Oh, thank you. Well, my boyfriend is 15 years younger than me, so I'm a crazy lover.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about I'll tell you another. Since we're talking about evidence, from what we've learned. when my daughter was born, I started drinking raw milk and eating raw butter.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that a lot of my digestive problems went completely away when I started doing that.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that? And do you drink raw milk or eat raw butter?
Yeah, I do, and I buy organic pastures, and I know Mark McAfee. He's a really wonderful person. He championed raw milk in California. He has really fought really hard because the powers that be would love to shut raw milk down, and it does make sense. I mean, if you go to the bathroom, sorry to be gross, but if you go to the bathroom and you don't wash your hands and you go out and milk a cow, and you serve that milk to your kids, that's going to be a big problem, right? And that's basically what happened prior to pasteurization, is that their cows were in filthy situations, and so all these children were dying, and then Louis Pasteur came along with his germ theory of disease, and he introduced the fact that all disease comes from some kind of bug, basically. And so then people started understanding hygiene and sanitation, and he introduced pasteurization. That's what it comes from, Louis Pasteur. And so they started pasteurizing milk. But the good thing is that people stopped dying. But the bad thing was that they didn't really understand that they just needed to set those cows free, because the cows were being kept in filthy conditions, and the workers weren't washing their hands. And now when you have raw milk, you're eating a real superfood, and because the industry is monitored so closely, the incidence of illness and death is really nil. However, when you look at commercial milk, if I don't have children, but I wouldn't even feed commercial milk to my dog, because it's really, really a bad food. And I think it's probably one of the number one foods that's led to precocious puberty, to ADHD, to autoimmune conditions, to all kinds of things. It's a really, really bad food. And the reason is because these cows are super cows. They're bred to be super huge milk producing machines. And so cows have 4 stomachs. They're meant to eat shrubs and branches and grass and things like that. But what they're giving them is genetically modified soy and grains like corn and soy grains, which they're not able to fully digest in their 4 stomachs, and so they develop all kinds of things like mastitis, which is like infection of the udders. And so to treat that, then they give them antibiotics in huge doses. So when you drink that milk, you are not just drinking 1 cow's milk or 10 cows' milk. You're drinking the commingled milk of thousands of cows, because it all goes into big tankers, and you're drinking pus, because that mastitis, which is an infection, was treated with antibiotics, and so all those white blood cells, they're in that milk, so you're basically drinking a big glass of pus. It's pretty gross.
Probably all kinds of stuff in there, because I guess they since they're superheating it, they say, oh yeah, maybe a rat fell in there or something, but it's going to get superheated, so who cares?
Besides that, you're drinking, all kinds of drugs, like hundreds of different types of drugs, and chemical fertilizers, the GMO residue from the feed that they were given. I mean, you could just go on and on. It is really a toxic brew. It's bad. And so for that reason, when I'm in restaurants, I don't order cream soups and stuff like that unless I know I'm in a restaurant that's using organic. Well, I live in Santa Monica, so I have, it's a little more enlightened here. But if I'm elsewhere, I wouldn't order a cream soup or anything made out of cream or milk.
Are there good supermarkets where you live?
I shop a lot at Whole Foods. I go to the farmer's market occasionally, but I think Whole Foods has done a pretty good job, except for the fact that they're soy central, vegan central, and canola central, and those are 3 very bad things. But other than that, I like the way that the fact that they've made a real effort to procure humanely raised meat. They do a really good job with that. They do a really good job with their organic vegetables. Unfortunately, even though they did get behind Mark McAfee when he was fighting the California legislature to keep raw milk on the market, they do not sell raw milk. And the reason is because Americans are so litigious that somebody's going to stub their toe and blame it on raw milk and they'll be in a lawsuit. So they just don't do it.
Yeah, luckily Sprouts carries raw milk out here. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think that. What's that?
It's yummy. It tastes like ice cream.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, they. I think Whole Foods owns Sprouts, but Sprouts is out this way.
Oh, okay.
And,
Yeah, I'm in the Farm Belt, and I can't get raw milk. I used to. Yeah,
No.
I used to have a place that I had to drive like 45 minutes to get it, and they, because of the drought and everything, they relocated to another state.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, the Farm Belt, I go to Kentucky a lot because my boyfriend's from Kentucky, and it took me a long time to find any place where I could really eat comfortably, and most of the time I do make concessions that I'm not happy about. So the Midwest has a lot of catching up to do, for sure, unfortunately, and ironically.
Right, and there's not I guess there's just not the demand, but to have a business doing it. But I mean, the people that I bought raw milk from, looked like they were real busy selling to people that were coming from all around, and so there is some demand here, but there's just no supply.
Yeah, and it is like I said, it's a very, very, very strictly monitored industry, and even the people within the industry, they don't want people messing around with it, because if one false move and the whole industry would come crashing down. And the reason, I just want to make this point too, because this is really important in understanding the difference between processed food and real food, is there's a big difference between acute illness and chronic illness. Okay, so acute illness is if you eat a poison mushroom and you die, or you eat unpasteurized milk that's been contaminated and you die. Okay, mm-hmm. So then all of a sudden, like, this mushroom and this milk is bad for you. Nobody can ever have it ever again, right? That's what the powers that be would say. But chronic illness, which is what has happened to Americans, so that people are obese, they're sick, they're dying in really bad ways, they're suffering with autoimmune conditions in horrible, horrible ways. That's okay, because you can't really put your finger on it, right? It's like, well, you can't really point to milk or mushrooms. You can't say that's what caused it, even though we know, because anybody who studied physiology at all would know that it's the food that's doing that to people, to our population. In fact, the world now, because the whole world has gotten Americanized when it comes to food. But because the FDA has the stance that a little bit of poison here and there is fine, and so we have what's called GRAS, which is generally recognized as safe. So let's say you want to produce a mushroom, poison mushroom health food bar. You just send the paperwork into the FDA, and they file it away in their generally recognized as safe file. Nobody looks at it. Nobody cares what you're putting in your poison mushroom power bar, as long as you tell them it's okay. And they take your word for it. And they're like, it's okay. Because they have this attitude that, well, we're going to use some Tide detergent, we're going to use some Windex, and we're going to use some additives, and we're going to throw in a little MSG and a little aspartame, and just a little bit of this and a little bit of that all day long, every single day of your life,
Right.
Is okay, but it's not. And we've seen that, as is called empirical evidence, which you and I talked about. Empirical evidence means that what you see with your eyes is what is happening around you. Where the medical community laughs and scoffs at empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is nothing to them. Although, if it's a hypothesis, that's different. So that's why we have chronic illness in our country, because everything that we're consuming is considered okay in a little amounts.
Right, and then the cumulative effect is what gets you, and then the idea that it's toxic, but you're not meant to consume a lot of it, and then there's no regulations on how much people can buy. They go out and stock up on soda pop and drink them all day, and it's not, and then the Coke manufacturers, the soda pop manufacturers can come back and say, well, yeah, our product is not really designed to be consumed all day long every day, so we're off the hook on any ill effects that it might have. Right,
and you can't really point your finger. Was it the Diet Coke, or was it the chemical candle fake essential oil thing that was like sprouting out of your wall socket? Was what made me sick? I don't know. But my position is that it's a combined effect. And so that's why I don't just eat real food. I try not to take drugs. I try not to expose myself to toxic cleaning supplies. I don't have a microwave. I don't use plastic inside, and I don't expose food to plastic. There's a lot of things that you need to know to protect yourself in our very, very, very toxic world. FDA approved toxic world.
Nancy, what do you know about wheat and grains and gluten, and is there any benefit to eating grains? And maybe you can even tie that into, the vegetarian versus the meat eater type thing, because vegetarians believe that they can, live off of wheat and rice and all that type of stuff, and they're going to get all of their protein from vegetables and soy and all sorts of stuff.
I'd love to talk about that. And I don't usually stray too far into the veganism, because vegans are so angry, and they're so I don't really want to get into fights with people. So again, I'm not sitting in judgment, and I'm not the food police. I'm just telling you what I know about physiology. When it comes,
we're talking about empirical evidence here. I was a vegetarian. I had a terrible time. And so, yeah, if anybody's got any problems, you can send it to Chris at hoaxbusterscall.com. No, just kidding.
Okay, so grains. Grains were introduced 10,000 years ago, which in the scheme of things is not a long time for human beings to become accustomed to eating it. And so in the beginning, I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm assuming that not very many people ate very much grain material, because humans have always been carnivores. But it did start filling out the human diet, and by the year 1900, we were starting to see processed foods. Cornflakes was the first thing to be introduced. But now, really, honestly, it's so hard to go into a restaurant and order anything, because it's all grains, it's all processed carbs. And so now that we haven't become, our bodies have not become accustomed to eating grains, we are now eating them in a stripped down form, which is 10 times worse. So my feeling about grains is I eat grains once in a while, like I'll have like a bite of cake or something like that, but I don't make quinoa or oatmeal. I've really discontinued all of that. So if I'm going to go for the grain, I'm going to go for the the super dessert thing or something. But it's very rare, and I don't eat grains. I mean, I'll go weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks without eating anything grain. So in terms of vegans and vegetarians living on grains, and I'm sure that there's people in their cars right now just gripping their steering wheels with white knuckles. They're so mad at me. But the thing is that human beings need 22 amino acids every single day. Not just once a week, not just, once in a while, but every single day. And 8 of those amino acids are not made in the body. They must be eaten. So you can, I understand from some of the clinical nutritionists I know, you can kind of design a vegan program that has to do with Brazilian nuts and rice and beans combos and stuff like that to get the essential amino acids. But there are 2 problems with that. First of all, you can't do it every day. It's impossible. And second of all, a cup of rice and beans has about 86 grams of carbohydrate in it, which is more carbohydrate than I eat an entire day. So this leads us full circle back to a very important subject that everybody should know about, which is if you want to be optimally healthy, the number one thing you need to do is to keep your insulin levels low, because high, prolonged insulin levels lead to every single degenerative disease of aging: cancer, heart disease, stroke, hypertension, and on and on. So if you want to be healthy, you need to keep your insulin levels low. It's impossible to keep your insulin levels low if you're eating a high carbohydrate diet in order to get your proteins. So does that answer your question in a long drawn out way?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's what, we want to hear what you think. So absolutely. What about, go ahead, Chris.
I just wanted to ask real quick what she thought about pickled stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, anything fermented, you want to get something fermented into your diet on a regular basis, or drink raw milk. And the reason is, or even blenderized vegetables is a good idea, because you want to have enzymes in your diet. And historically, human beings always ate enzymatic foods every day. It was just part of our diet. Like in Korea, they ate kimchi, and people of every single culture have had enzymatic fermented foods. Like the Japanese we were talking about earlier, they had miso and tempeh and things that were soy foods that were fermented, and they ate a small amount of it. And the reason is because you need enzymes to digest food. They start digesting in your mouth, goes into your stomach, goes into your intestines, and continues digesting with these enzymes. And the more you require your own pancreas to be producing all these digestive enzymes, the more taxing it is on your body. So it's another way to forestall aging and to stop and prevent accelerated aging is to eat fermented foods like pickles.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
because I like kimchi, I like pickles, I like pickled food, I like pickled eggs.
Another really good enzymatic food is live beer. Unpasteurized beer from a brewery. So that's a very good food. Believe it or not. Yeah, I know. Isn't that cool? It really is.
All right.
Yeah.
Where would you get that? I couldn't get that here.
Well, breweries don't pasteurize their beer. That's why if you bring home a jug of it, it goes bad in 3 days, because it's not pasteurized. So it's a living food, so it dies.
Oh, wow. Pasteurization would probably kill the flavor of it. It would just kill. It would make it not even drinkable, probably, huh?
Well, Coors, Budweiser, any beer that you get in a bottle, that's all pasteurized. And I was at Keeneland racetrack with my boyfriend a couple weeks ago, and I thought, what the heck, I'm going to have a beer. It was so disgusting, I took it back. I said, I can't drink this. It's so awful. It was so processed tasting and so flat and awful. But real beer from a brewery, as we all know, it's pretty good food. And the reason is because it's living. You know, it doesn't have a lot of chemicals in it and stuff.
Yeah, I used to live close. Go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say a lot of beer is just totally laced with chemicals, and most of the beers, like if you're drinking Budweiser or Coors, it's like they use a syrup now. It's like they already have a pre-made syrup that they just. It's kind of like how you make a soda pop.
Yeah,
that's how they make
that. Anything to make it cheaper, really. Anything to make it cheaper. That's the whole name of the game in the food and beverage industry, is make it cheap. And who cares if it's poisonous, toxic crap? You know, just make it cheap.
Yeah, we were talking about that. How like if you get like cheaper items in the grocery store, and then you flip them around and look at and read off the ingredients, it'll have 500 ingredients. I mean, it's just this incredibly long list of additives and stuff they put in there. It's like, it seems to me that would be more cost prohibitive to have to add all that different stuff into your product, as opposed to having a product that's, you know, it's just straightforward and unprocessed.
Well, right now, because the supply and demand has flipped over, so the demand is for processed food, and the demand for real food has just started, which is really great, though, because it's starting to grow. And so, like I said, I happen to live in a community that people have gotten onto real food, so I can go into a restaurant and I see the words humanely raised, grass-fed on the menu. So people are, but it's more expensive. And what you were saying, why would it be cheaper? Because these products have shelf lives that are just incredibly long, and so they can ship it all over the place and store it, and they don't have to worry about it perishing like they do with real food that rots. So it is cheaper now. And, you know, like if everybody in the United States stopped eating processed food tomorrow, we wouldn't have the food to feed the population. So that's another thing. That's another big, you know, quandary, is that how do you get real food to the masses? And, you know, I think that they're one of the reasons why the government hasn't pushed harder. I mean, look at Michelle Obama. She clearly understands the issue. But I think the reason why the government hasn't pushed harder is because it's right now impossible. You know, it's impossible.
I've heard that as a reason. You know, like it's all those additives preserve the food and it has a longer shelf life. But I've looked into like how much food gets thrown into the dumpster from grocery stores, and it's almost like, well, that doesn't even really jive with the whole, you know, because if it's already throwing half the food in the dumpster, and then like they say like as far as produce goes, like up to a third gets tossed out before it even gets in the grocery store because it maybe have a blemish on it or something like that. So I mean, there's so much like extravagant waste in the grocery industry. It's almost like what I mean, if they started selling you know, unprocessed food that was just, you know, straightforward food and just had the decent packaging that preserved it, you know, for a reasonable amount of time, that wouldn't really make a lot of, you know, difference, because since they're already throwing half of it away.
I really don't know how much food gets thrown away. I do know that there are severe restrictions about donating food from restaurants and supermarkets because of possible liability and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's a whole nother subject. That's not really my bailiwick. But I really one of the topics I'd really like to talk with you guys about is dieting and weight loss, because that's one of the topics that perpetuates the whole synergistic relationships between the food, diet, and drug industries is obesity. And it's one of the reasons why obesity sustains the whole thing. People's
aren't diet? Wouldn't you say that diets are largely a giant hoax?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Dieting fails every time. That's why people lose hundreds of pounds of weight in their lifetimes and they're still fat. And I look at overweight people, let's call them what they are, fat people. I look at them as victims. They're victims because most of them were sat in front of TVs and brainwashed into eating this garbage. They were given baby bottles of Dr. Pepper or whatever when they were, infants, sent off to school with snickerdoodles or whatever garbage their parents gave them, and then processed food, pizza for dinner. And so by the time they're adults, their brains are so indoctrinated to that food because we are really led around by our brains. And you would think that the human brain would be smart enough to say, hey, I could use some real food up here, but it's not. It doesn't work like that. We're all driven by neurotransmitters, which are happy chemicals, brain chemicals. And so when someone eats this highly refined food, carbohydrates like a pizza or something like that, turns into sugar immediately into their brain so they feel better. They feel happy because they get a little dump of serotonin. But then you get the roller coaster dive because that food has to be stored away immediately because you can't have too much blood sugar in your bloodstream. And then all of a sudden they've got the craving again. And so this goes on for people all day long. And so then they go on a diet, right? And then their brain's working against them again because the brain is programmed for survival. So once you use up all your ready stores of energy in your muscles and your liver, the brain's going to start screaming in such a way that usually people cannot resist. They may be able to go a week or two or something like that, and then they are programmed to overeat. And this was demonstrated in the most brilliant study, and I'm always blown away that nobody else but me talks about it because it was so amazing. It was the semi-starvation study that they did at the University of Minnesota right at the end of World War II because they knew that they were going to have a lot of people on their hands to deal with who were starving, and they wanted to understand the mechanisms of starvation. So they took conscientious objectors who they wanted to contribute to the war effort, but they didn't want to fight and kill people. So they put these guys who were in their early 20s, this was like in, let's say, 1943-ish, and they put them on 1,800 calories a day. And back then, that was considered semi-starvation because people were eating a lot more food back then because they were eating real food and they were moving around a lot more, like doing farm chores and things like that. So after 6 months, these normal, healthy, completely psychologically sound guys had wigged out completely. They were hiding and hoarding food. They were binging. They were obsessing about food. They were doing weird things like putting weird combinations of food together, mixing it together. They were digging through garbage pails. They had really gone off the deep end because of this semi-starvation. So this is analogous to what's happening with people today. I mean, I know lots of people who were anorexic and bulimic, which is the same exact characteristics that were demonstrated by these conscientious objectors at the end of this 6-month trial semi-starvation study. And so what we do now with this population, we've got millions of people on diets and millions of people who are hiding food, who are hoarding food, who are obsessing about food, that their whole life is food, 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 whether they're dieting or not dieting. And so what do you do about that? That's the question. What do you do about that? In my opinion, what's happening now is that this population of people who are demonstrating these behaviors, who are grossly overweight, are not only wreaking havoc on their brains because they're dieting intermittently, but also because they're eating factory-produced food, which is not recognized as nutrition by their brains. And so they're demonstrating the same behaviors that the semi-starvation conscious objectors demonstrated in the semi-starvation study. So the solution is, if you want to lose weight and you've been on this roller coaster yo-yo dieting thing your whole entire life, what you need to do is you need to suck it up and do what Americans have always done and demonstrate a little bit of backbone and some courage and push away that pizza and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Cheerios and Trix and all this stuff that's making you fat and crazy, and start eating real food. Have bacon and eggs for breakfast. Have a fish and salad for dinner, for lunch. Have steak and a baked potato and some green beans for dinner. So I hope that makes sense, because if more people did that, they wouldn't even have to diet. Within a year, they would be a normal size, they would be healthy, they would be happy, and they would be just, that whole thing could be behind them for good.
Yeah, people used to eat that way, not even like a generation ago or a couple of generations ago. That's the way people ate. And they ate real food, And so this is all, a lot of this consumption of this highly processed food, just becoming predominant in people's diets. That's a relatively new thing. When you say
it is new, and so is 2/3 of the population being obese. That's new.
Yeah. Wow.
And so if you look at that, you have to say, okay, there's a causal factor here. We can see it. It's really evident. We don't need a study to show us that eating Cheerios for breakfast is going to make you fat eventually. And I'm sure there's people out there who say, well, I eat Cheerios for breakfast and I'm not fat. There are some people who can skate through. There are some people who can get through eating processed food and they don't get fat. That's 1/3. That's 1/3 of the population. The rest of the 2/3 cannot do it. And so what does that say for our future generations? Does that mean that like 1 out of every 100 person is going to be a normal size? I think it's pretty scary and sad.
Yeah, you know what we talk about a lot is salt consumption has gone down because we've been sold this idea that salt's bad for us. What do you have to say about salt?
People wouldn't be eating too much salt if they weren't eating processed food, because unless you're real food doesn't really need a lot of salt. It just needs a little seasoning, which everybody needs to season their food to make it taste good. But the only reason people are eating too much salt is because they're eating processed food. And they put a lot of salt, they put a lot of MSG, they put a lot of sugar, and they put a lot of damaged, awful, bad fats into processed foods.
Do you think that mineral salt's good for you?
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
I was going to say, isn't mineral salt good for you? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. Yeah, sea salt. You want to eat sea salt from the earth. It's filled with minerals. And so, in times past, people got their full nutrition by eating as many varieties of foods as they could, including seasonings, spices. Spices have therapeutic value, medicinal value. Herbs have medicinal value, and salt has medicinal value because it's therapeutic. It lends minerals, and we all need minerals in our diet.
I've heard that it's hard to get too much salt if you're getting the right kind of salt, but the salt that is in the packaged foods and sold as table salt is a different kind of chemical compound.
Well,
it's bad for you.
It's basically the salt that you put on the snow to melt the snow, because it has they strip the minerals out, they send it to 1 a day or whatever so they can make their little ridiculous vitamins out of it, and then they sell the salts and they dump some iodine in it and they tell you that it's healthy, but it's not. So if you want to have healthy salt, buy sea salt. It's everywhere anymore. You can get it anywhere.
Is iodine important? Do you supplement it?
I do not, no. And I don't think anybody should supplement something that crucial, which is, again, it affects your thyroid without asking your doctor, and hopefully it's an enlightened doctor.
I've been eating seaweed snacks.
Uh-huh.
That are the dried little sheets of seaweed. And
yeah.
I'm kind of hooked on those things now.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah. I really like those. And I imagine they got to have some iodine in them.
Yeah, but not copious amounts because you're not eating bales of it. I like the wet seaweed salad you can get at Whole Foods. That's really good.
Just so you know, I had a bad experience with iodine. I don't recommend anybody supplement with iodine ever.
You have had?
Yeah, I was supplementing with iodine, and, I thought it was good because, I listened to some health unprofessionals, I'd call them.
Mm-hmm.
And, I ended up with a weird rash around my eyes. Like I looked like a raccoon for about a week until I got it all out of my system. And once I stopped taking the iodine, that all went away.
Yeah, I think you need to be really careful about supplements. You either need to be really, really, really well read, like I am, and even every once in a while, I'm always juggling what I take. I'll take a little bit of this or a little bit of that, but I know what I'm doing. So, and I'm also constantly questioning and reading, and supplements, you should not, please don't go to a big box or drugstore or a GNC or any of these places. They're really, really garbage, and not only do they don't have what they say they have in them, but they have toxic fillers and they have just stuff that you don't need. So beware about supplements.
Can you? There's one thing I definitely wanted you to talk about, which you talk about in Death by Supermarket. How important is it to be de-stressed to stay healthy?
Well, I think that even unenlightened doctors will agree that stress does kill. Stress, the world we live in is very adrenal pounding. And so people are just pounding and taxing their adrenals like crazy. So de-stressing is really important. Having fun. Americans don't take vacations like Europeans do. And we don't value fun. We don't value fun like we should. You should have fun every day. And if your relationship's not fun, then maybe you should think about getting out of it, is what I say. Which may sound really radical to some people, but really, you only live once, and it's important to have fun every single day. And having fun and doing mind-clearing activities, really, really important. Things that clear your mind completely of worry and concerns. And we all have worry and concerns. Even people who are, meditators or whatever, everybody's got worries and concerns. So it's just important to spend some time every day doing some kind of activity that completely clears your mind. And I'm not talking about watching TV. I'm talking about riding your bike or skateboarding with your dog or playing with your kids or doing something that's mind clearing, that where all the thoughts go out of your head and you're just not thinking about anything.
Yeah, a lot of Americans will go on vacation, and then it's okay. I got a couple of weeks vacation, and then they schedule a visit to one of these commercial theme parks, and then they take their children there, and then they come back and they're all wore out and stressed out and from chasing the kids around, and it's just this really overstimulating, wild atmosphere that it just like ramps up the whole adrenaline thing, and
right.
That's how people spend their vacations.
Right, and then they have to resort to pots and pots and pots of coffee and cigarettes and other stimulants to keep them from crashing. So yeah, I think that's a big problem in our society. Is stress is a huge, huge, huge problem. But fortunately, we're also going in the direction of more people are understanding how to de-stress, more people are meditating, more people are becoming wiser. Like you said, they're not doing those kinds of vacations. They're doing other kinds of vacations that are more relaxing and more bonding with their kids. And so that's a good thing. Honestly, in the 20 years that I've been working on health books, I've seen such an uptick in healthy eating and lifestyle behaviors. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I think that more and more people are becoming educated, and that's always been my mantra: get educated. Don't listen to me, read yourself, become educated. And so I think we're seeing some improvements, and it's a good thing. It's really a positive thing. Like 20 years ago, I couldn't go to Lexington, Kentucky and go to a yoga class because yoga wasn't there. But now when I go to Lexington or any place in the Midwest, there's yoga. There are yoga studios everywhere. That's a really good thing. That shows improvement, in my opinion.
Nancy, what do you think about? I'm being a little bit sarcastic, if you don't mind.
No.
I'm just going to eat a whole bunch of fruit, and I'm going to be healthy. What do you think about that?
Okay, well, I think, was it Fruitarian? That's what it's called. And why is my mind blanking? The guy who started Mac, what was his name? Oh, he was a fruitarian. He died just recently. Come on, help me out. I can't think of his name. Anyway.
I'm on Google now.
No, there's a movie about him out recently. Anyway, with Ashton Kutcher even. Fruit is all sugar.
Mac Danzig?
Pardon me?
Mac Danzig?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Apple.
That's the first result that came up.
The guy who started Apple.
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, Steve Jobs.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he was a fruitarian. Pretty sure at one point. You'll probably get lots of calls saying that woman's wacky. But anyway, so if you eat nothing but sugar, you're pretty much either destined to have cancer or a heart attack because it's very insulin producing. It's nothing but sugar. Yes, there are micronutrients in it, and if you eat fruit, a small amount of fruit with a healthy, balanced diet, then that's a good thing. But eating all fruit or eating lots and lots of fruit is not a good thing. Which leads me to say that I would really like this to be in this interview, that people can hear this, is that people need to eat real, whole, living food. Food that could, in theory, because we're not doing it anymore, be picked, gathered, milked, hunted, or fished. So just say that to yourself: picked, gathered, milked, hunted, or fished, and as close to that natural state as possible in a balanced way. And when I say a balanced way, that means in a way that suits you. Like if you're a NFL basketball player, you can eat a lot more carbs than I can and have a lowered insulin level. But if you're sitting around in your office all day, not doing very much, then you really don't need very many carbohydrates because you don't need a lot of fuel. So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I eat a lot of, I try to get as much variety as possible of those things.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. That's a really good point. Is that, prior to 150 years ago, people were all, unless they were, the aristocracy or the monarchy, or extremely wealthy in some other way, they were pretty much limited to, they had a limited diet, very limited. They might kill a chicken and have some corn or something like that for dinner. But now we go into the supermarket and we just have this cornucopia of choices. Unfortunately, most of it is processed, but all that to say, if you choose to spend your money on food rather than buying a new iPhone or something like that, then you can go into the supermarket and you can buy real food, abundance of real food, and all kinds of things. There's so many choices. There's so many vegetables that you can buy, and nuts, and different meats, and there's just so much, that mushrooms, and I mean, it's crazy what's available now, and it's never been like that in the history of humankind until just recently.
Well, I was watching like this documentary. Well, the so-called primitive people that live out in the Amazon, and they're hunting and gathering, and they're going to be eating, fish. They may eat a few bugs. They'll eat they get a monkey or just whatever's out there. They're just getting it, catching it, trapping it or whatever, and eating it. And it's just a variety, just a buffet of just whatever's out there. And I think that's a good approach.
When I started writing Death by Supermarket, I started researching this dentist named Weston A. And he was a dentist in the 30s. He was Canadian, but he came to the U.S., and he was really appalled by how bad the teeth were of the affluent children. So he just went on a lark. He took his wife. He decided he was going to go and research all the primitive people in the world that he could find. And at that time, there were still primitive people. He went to Peru. He went to crazy places like behind the Swiss Alps and Scotland, and places that were just cut off, where it was considered primitive people. They were living in primitive ways. They were self-sufficient. They weren't attached to civilization in any way. And the one thing that he found that was a correlation between all of these people is that they were all eating the meat and the milk products of grass-fed animals, whether it be antelope or cows. They were all eating that, and they were eating abundant amounts of butter and things like that. So I just wanted to add that in because his research and his book was really, really eye-opening for me, and to see that he found that these people were all so healthy and fertile, and they were free from depression, and there was no such thing as overweight or obesity, but that to the person, every single person who left that primitive tribe and went to, the white man ways, when the processed food and cornflakes and stuff, they all started suffering from obesity, depression, infertility, and all of these other diseases.
Yeah, if you look at the being in Oklahoma, it's like one of the few places you could see Indians, Native Americans, and I went to a friend of mine's Native American, so I went with one time. We went to a powwow, and it was almost like 90% of the American Indians that were there were obese.
Yeah, that's so sad, so wrong.
So I guess it's like their genetic makeup just can't handle the processed foods and stuff. I mean, that's nobody can, but
whose can? Yeah, I mean that's just it. What you're pointing out right there is not genetic makeup. You're pointing out poverty, because poor people are forced to eat the worst, most toxic food in our foodscape, and that's really, really a shame in our country. That you have to be relatively well off to eat real food and to sustain yourself and your family as living human beings, because you don't have the money. It's not right. It's certainly just not right.
Yeah, it's bad. A lot of people, though, have disposable income, that they use on non-essentials and stuff that, could be, like you were saying, that those expenses can be diverted into real food. Yeah. And, yeah, it is more expensive to eat real food, but I know my grocery bill is pretty high, but I don't have any other expenses really to speak of, as far as extraneous stuff.
But what more important thing to spend your money on than your body and your children's bodies? I mean, that's much more. I remember when I was in my 20s and, I was kind of broke and struggling and all of that, but I was a runner, and I used to always feel like I looked so much better than other people, even if I couldn't afford to have great clothes, because I looked really healthy, and I was thin and I was athletic because I was a runner and I ate real food. And so my point is that you don't have to have all these things to feel good about yourself. If you look really good and you're healthy and athletic and you feel good and you're not depressed, I mean, that's worth all of the money that you have, in my opinion.
I totally agree. Nancy, it's actually 2 minutes past the 75 mark, and it went just like that.
Yeah, it was fun. You guys are great.
Yeah,
Thanks, it was good having you here.
Yeah, you were you were a little bit worried that it wouldn't go so fast, but
yeah, it was a long interview. Yeah.
But you want to tell us about your new books and anything else that you want to leave us with as far as to educate? Thank you for coming and educating the audience to tune into our calls.
You're very welcome. Right now I don't have any plans on writing any more health books. I feel like I've said everything I wanted to say in Death by Supermarket and Healthy, Sexy, Happy. And I am entering my golden years now, and I want to enjoy my life the way I want to enjoy it. So I've turned to fiction. I just finished a memoir, as I mentioned before. It's the story of my first love and I. We went to India in 1968 overland on local buses, and it was just for lack of a better word, a trip. And and I've also just recently started an organization called Yoga for Incarcerated Women. We take yoga into jails. So we're just starting up, and we've been doing that since the fall, and so that's really a major focus for me. And I see a lot of what I'm talking about in jail with underprivileged people, and so I hope to make a little bit of a difference there. So that's basically what I'm doing now.
Very nice. Chris, do you have any closing comments you want to say?
I want to check Nancy's ID because I don't think she's 64.
Yeah, I wish. Thank you.
So that says a lot. I mean, that gives you a lot of credibility that you know what you're talking about. I would consider you a health expert, even though you don't have, credentials. I don't believe in credentials, so.
Well, I do have to say along those lines that I've been kind of preaching, although I try not to preach unless people ask me my opinion. But I've been supporting these views for most of my adult life, and it's only recently that people who have known me for a long time are starting to say, "What is it that you were saying again?" Because yeah. So that feels good.
Anybody who has letters behind their name is already suspect.
Yeah. What does PhD stand for? Piled high and deeper, or piled higher and deeper, right?
Yeah. There's
BS and there's PhD.
But yeah, that's one of the things I like we said, that's one of the reasons I asked you to come on, is because you have evidence in your own health and your own body, and it was a great conversation, and maybe sometime in the future, if you're up for it, we could do another one.
Absolutely. There's a lot of other subjects we could talk about, or we could review some of these, and maybe you'll get some feedback from people what they want to hear more. For anybody who's listening out there who's struggling with being overweight, you do have hope. I just really encourage you to stop eating processed food and start eating real whole living food, and it'll really change your life without having to struggle at all.
Bacon and eggs, butter and steak. I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, what more do you want?
What else is there? as far as food goes.
Nancy, what's a website people could look up what you're doing and get in contact with you if they want to?
Yeah, my website's nancydeville.com, and from there you can go to my Facebook page. I've been really awful about Instagram and Twitter, but I'm going to start, I promise. But you can see me on Facebook, you can comment, you can ask me questions, and I'm always happy to answer anybody's questions.
Great.
Sounds good.
That was a really good call, I thought.
Yeah, that was really good. Thanks for being with us, Nancy. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
Awesome. You're welcome. You guys have a great day.
Thank you, Nancy.
You too.
Take care.